So one of the other things that Joe didn't mention is I'm a proud graduate of Seminole State. And we were just discussing, I grew up here, and my kids went to school here. My oldest is now a student here as well. And it really makes me proud to see the work that you guys are doing on not just this subject, but so many other things. I'm very proud of this school and the work that they've accomplished. As Joe mentioned, I teach the Homeland Security classes as well as some of the criminal justice classes, and unfortunately, I'm still needed. And I would hope that after hearing speakers like my peers here and seeing the work that you guys are moving towards, someday you won't need somebody like me. But unfortunately, we still do. I think it's universally accepted that nobody likes fire, right? But despite that, we still have a fire plan. We still have smoke alarms. We still have an idea of what to do, how to respond to that. And these threats and hazards are out there, and we still need to be able to respond to them. We need to prepare as a community, as individuals. We have to understand what the threats are. We need to know what to do, unfortunately, if something did happen, which is why we teach the courses here at Seminole State and so many other institutions. We teach response, threat planning, threat analysis, a number of different classes. So I want to hit on a couple of key topics within those series of classes so we kind of can put these hazards in context as we move into the discussion and the question portion. One of the first misnomers is the difference between nuclear devices and radiological dispersion devices. They're all nuclear weapons. And obviously there's a lot of focus on nuclear devices, meaning conventional ballistic missiles and improvised nuclear devices. Those are the things that you saw earlier in the video, the things that were spoken about already in terms of missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles. They're designed for a very specific purpose, as mentioned. Mass destruction. Long distance delivery. They can be deployed from a number of different platforms, whether from a vehicle mount, a submarine, land-based system, but they have very specific purpose. They also require a great deal of technical detail and scientific engineering. This isn't something you're going to make in your garage. The upside to that is that it would not go unnoticed if a rogue nation or a rogue state started to develop their own nuclear weapons in this context. The materials, the engineering, the technical expertise needed to do something like that would not go unnoticed. They're also traditionally designed to be part of a more complex system, meaning that there is guidance systems, there's overriding systems, there's a network of deployment systems that go with that. But the upside to that is there's built-in safeguards, meaning it takes multiple people to activate it. But that safeguard, if we stop for a second and think about that, most of the ballistic missiles that are used have a process of systems to activate and deploy. But they all work with the assumption that the people that are in charge of them are going to deploy them appropriately, if there is an appropriate way to deploy them. Put that issue aside for a second. Think about that. It operates with the assumption that the people that control them know what they're doing, and they're going to control them appropriately. If we think about the largest or the most significant chemical weapon attack that's ever occurred, we go back to 1984 in Bhopal, India. There was about 16,000 people that died as a result of a chemical attack, about 500,000 people that were injured as a result of that. It was the result of an employee in a chemical factory that sabotaged the process. Somebody that had access, that was doing what they were supposed to do in terms of their job, but it sabotaged the safety procedures. So, not unlike we've seen recently with some of the airlines. So keep that in mind, that even though these have built-in safeguards, they are obviously vulnerable to human error or human decision-making. So the other one, which I tend to focus, I lose more sleep on here locally, is radiological dispersion devices. So radiological dispersion devices are really just any type of radiological material attached to a conventional explosive. So radiological material could be radiological waste from a medical facility, could be from some type of manufacturing. There's all types of legitimate uses of radiological and nuclear energy outside of weapons. But if that falls into the wrong hands or is stolen and then attached to some type of conventional explosive, it could too be considered a weapon of mass destruction. Now, obviously the devastation, the casualties is much lower, the property damage is much lower, but if you think about the panic and fear that that would create in a community, if there was a news story about an explosion downtown Orlando and the hazmat team picked up radiological hazards in their detection devices, what would happen? There'd be significant panic. So one of the other challenges with this is they are relatively simple to assemble and deploy. If I can get my hands on a couple of spent fuel rods or some radiological medical waste and attach that to some C4 or TNT, I can build that in my garage. And it's probably going to go undetected unless I get caught stealing that radiological material. But they certainly are less effective than a conventional nuclear weapon. So an intercontinental ballistic missile, obviously, again, this isn't something you're going to do on your own. This is not something that's going to go undetected. It takes a great deal of time, material, and resources to both build, procure, and deploy something like that. Whereas a radiological dispersion device could be any type of radiological material that could be blown up. So what is the actual threat? What does that mean for us? And I think there were some great comments made on this. You know, during the Cold War, there was a balance of power. There was this very perverse gentleman's agreement, if you will, that if you don't, I won't. If you will, I will, which is a horrible plan, by the way. But nonetheless, we survived that. But in a post-Cold War environment, after we saw the breakup of USSR and some of those rogue nation states go off, we saw a great deal of this material and the weaponry fall into the wrong hands, some into the black market. But more concerning is this concept of asymmetrical warfare. Again, Cold War and prior, symmetrical warfare is just like it sounds, even on both sides. You show up on your side of the field with your cannons, and which, by the way, that was disturbing. I've envisioned my death several times, and I never thought about a cannonball going through me. That was concerning. But if you think about a symmetrical war, that's exactly what it is. It's equal, almost equal sides opposed on a battlefield, and winner takes all. Asymmetrical warfare is just the opposite. It's the use of unconventional methods that are often not equal. So weapons of mass destruction could be chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, explosives. All of those are considered WMDs. Cyber terrorism and agroterrorism, in the past we never would have considered that. But we could cripple, an entire country could be crippled through cyber terrorism, through the power grid, through telecommunications. All of that is very vulnerable. Agroterrorism, we have a very fragile food system here in the US, can easily target it. And of course, soft targets, schools, churches, shopping malls, businesses, all of the things that we would have considered in this period off limits are no longer off limits. So I'm often asked in the classes, what's the difference between terrorism and crime? And I answer back with one simple question. Does the act attempt to influence political decision-making or impose an ideological belief? The act, whatever that is, the bombing, the fire, whatever the act. Is it done to perpetuate or impose an ideological belief? Whatever that ideological belief is fueled by, politics, religion, combinations. If it is, then it's terrorism. So when we look at who are the most likely people to be involved in this, more often than not, we see the same common denominator. People who feel like they're powerless without hope will resort to extreme measures to influence others. So people that are disenfranchised from the community, people that feel like their voice is not heard, they feel like they're not part of the society, will take extreme measures to make sure that their voice is heard, which is a deadly combination when you mix it with these things. So I'll sum up there because I'm out of time. Okay? Thank you.